everyone, my name is Maria Irene Mehrada and I am assigned to discuss the introduction or the rationale of our lesson plan. Our lesson plan is 4A's and it is a weekly lesson plan. That's why we decided to divide it until day 5 to cover the whole week discussion. So 4A's has its own correct order of the lesson, which are the objective, subject matter, procedure, evaluation, and the assignment. So under the procedure is we have the preliminary activities and the 4A's, which are the activity, analysis, abstraction, and the last one is the application. Our learning competencies is to use passive and active voice meaningfully in board context. Next is the learning objective. So we have 3 learning objectives. First is to identify the difference between passive and active voice. Second is to construct on sentences using passive and active voice. And third is to value the lesson. Now let's proceed with the subject matter. So in the subject matter is we have the topic, reference, and the materials. So on the topic, it focuses on the meaning of the passive and active voice. Reference is where we get the activities and the coverage of our lesson plan. And the materials is the things that we need in order for us to deliver the lesson. The third one is the procedure. Under the procedure is we have the preliminary activities, and these are the prayer, greetings, checking of attendance, reminders, and review about the previous topic. Now, let's proceed with our 4A's. So first is we have the activity. As you can see in our lesson plan is we have an example of which is a chart to represent the difference between the active and the passive voice. Next is the analysis. Analysis is you need to question your students. You need to ask them about what they have observed and what are their thoughts about the topic. Next is the abstraction, which is the third one. Abstraction is a discussion which you need to elaborate more about what active and passive voice are. The last one in the 4A is the application. Application is very important and scary at the same time because you really need to make sure that your students really understand the lesson. In this case, the students will do their tasks with their group mates to contribute, to share, and to learn a new knowledge with their classmates. The next one is the evaluation. You really need to evaluate your students if they really understand the lesson, which is the passive and the active voice. And next is the assignment. And the other part of our lesson plan will be discussed with my group mates.
So for our assessment is to create 5 sentences using the active and passive tenses and another 5 sentences using future simple and future perfect tenses. So as you remember, our first learning objectives is to identify the difference between the two. What are those two? The difference between the active and passive voice. So if you would take a look to our assessment, it is still connected because we will let students to create sentences which is still connected to our second learning objectives, which is construct your own sentence using active and passive voice. And this assessment says that students will going to create 5 sentences using the active and passive, and they know how to difference between the two, between the active and passive, and after they know the difference, they will going to construct their own sentences. and they will going to also identify what are those tenses that teachers are been discussed to them. So for our last learning objectives is to value the lesson by showing active participation to the students towards the task. So as you can see, or as you can really have a deep thought to our learning objectives and our assessment, that two is still connected. So I guess there's no further explanation for that. I guess I explained it thoroughly and hope you understand it. Thank you.
My part is to discuss about the learning objectives, the activity, and versus the assessment. So, since we have a weekly lesson plan, so we also have 5 different learning objectives. So these are the 5 different learning objectives. First, at the end of the week or at the end of the day, the students will be able to first construct own sentences using the active and passive voice. Second, learn to classify what is simple tense, present tense, and past continuous tense. On the third day, the students will be able to learn past tense, past perfect tense, and past continuous tense. Fourth, the students will able to create sentences in future simple or perfect converting to active and passive voice. And our day 5, we have the overall assessment. And now let's try to see if our learning objectives hits or connects with our learning or with our assessment and activity. In our first learning objectives, we have the constructing own sentences using the active and passive voice. And in our assessment and our summative assessment, we can see in letter B, number 11 to 20, we can see here a sentence construction where the students will construct a sentence from active to passive voice. Next, LO number 2 and 3 is learn. The students will be able to learn how to classify what is simple tense, present continuous tense, and present perfect tense. And number 3, able to classify past tense, past perfect tense, and past continuous tense. And in our summative test, test 1, number 1 to 10, it contains all the tenses. And in LO number 4, the students will be able to create sentences in future simple or future perfect, converting to active and passive voices. In our assessment, number 31 to 45, the students will able to locate the perfect conversion for simple, future simple or future perfect of action of active and passive voices. And LO number 5 is our overall assessment. And regarding with our activity, in every learning objectives there are different.
Good day everyone, I'm Rochelle Espinarejo and I'm gonna discuss about the grammatical test, which includes the TOS, learning objectives, and the assessment. So first, I'm gonna show you our day 1 objectives. So in day 1 objectives, the domain here is remembering and understanding. So the objectives is at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to A. Identify the difference between active and passive voice. B. Construct own sentences of active and passive voice. And C. Value the lesson by showing active participation of the students towards the task. So it literally connects to the table of specifications, which is remembering and understanding, because in the remembering part, the objectives here in TOS is identify active and passive voice according to its definition. In assessment, item numbers 1, 2, 4, 22, and 25 is about remembering. It is the remembering part, and it has a number of items 5. Percentage is 10% of the assessment. So in understanding, choose the appropriate form of voices in a given sentence. So it connects to the objectives. Letter B, construct own sentences of active and passive voice. Items number 6 to 10 is about the understanding part, which is the student will choose the appropriate form of voices in a given sentence. So it has a number of items 5, equivalent to percentage of 10. And the day 2, which has a domain of applying. The objectives in day 2 is at the end of the lesson plan, the students will be able to classify what is simple present tense, present continuous tense, and present perfect tense. Letter B, demonstrate accurate values in participating to group outputs. And letter C, construct own sentences using voice tenses. So it connects to our applying in table of specification, which has a objective of write sentences observing rules of active and passive voice and vice versa. So it literally connect to the applying, because in our objectives in day 2 has written a demonstrate accurate values in participating to group outputs and classify what is simple present tense, present continuous tense, and present perfect tense. So in item numbers 11 to 30 and a total number of items, it is 20, and the percentage of this assessment is equivalent to 40%. So that's all, and another members of the group will explain the analyzing, evaluating, and creating of about the table of specification of active and passive voice. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, good day everyone. My name is Kerny Quiñones. So for today, we will have our third day objectives, which are identify the simple past tense, past perfect, and past continuous. Select the correct usage of past tense in a sentence in active and passive voice. And last one is explain the difference between active and passive voice. So these objectives falls to cognitive domain, specifically in analyzing. So now, let's have a quick view in our TOS. So, level analyzing, objective, determine the difference between active and passive voice. Items number 31 and 40. So here, this objective hit the summative because the main goal of the LO is to explain the difference between the active and the passive voice. So next one is in fourth day of our objectives. So So our fourth day of our objectives are identify the difference between future simple and future tense, assess the rules of active and passive voice in the sentence, and produce the sentence using active and passive voice. So here, our objectives falls to psychomotor domain because of the word assess and produce, and specifically in evaluating and creating levels. So now let's have a view in our post. So evaluate whether or not the sentence observes the rules of active and passive voice. Items number 35212324. So the creating one is construct a sentence from active to passive voice and vice versa, 40 to 50. So this thing is hit our LO because our LO said that we should assess the rules of active and passive voice and produce sentence using active and passive voice, which it performed by the summative test. So they are both connected because they already hit the goal of the LO is to assess and to produce. So here are tasks: analyzing, evaluating, and creating.
So I'm going now to discuss the table of specifications versus assessment. So it tackles the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, which are the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So the first level is remembering. Our objective for remembering is the students will be able to identify active and passive voice according to its definition. Item numbers are 1, 2, 4, 22, and 25. So that's 5 items and it is 10% of the test. Second is understanding. Choose the appropriate form of voices in a given sentences. Item numbers 6 to 10, so that's 5 items again, and that's 10% of the test. Third is applying. In applying, the objective is write sentences observing rules of active and passive voice and vice versa. The item numbers is 11 to 30. So that's 20 items and it's 40% of the test. The fourth is analyzing. The objective of analyzing is determine the difference between active and passive voice. Number of items, numbers 31 to 40. So that's 10 items and that's 10% of the test. Fifth is evaluating. You need to evaluate whether or not the sentence observes the rules of active and passive voice. Item numbers 3, 5, 21, 23, and 24. So that's evaluating. And that's 5 items for 10% of the test. And last is the creating. The objective of creating is construct a sentence from active to passive voice and vice versa. Item numbers 40 to 50 and the number of items is 10 and that's 20% of the test. So overall, our test consists 50 items for a total of 100%. So table of specification is helpful for a constructor or for a teacher because it helps the teacher to be able to really connect the content into the test or the assessment. Also, TUS helps the teacher to be able to measure his assessment if it really targets the overall topic.